Dean Corll, later known as the Candy Man, was born in 1939 in Indiana but built his life in Houston, where his family ran a candy factory. He was well liked by neighborhood kids, handing out free treats and rides. That trusted image hid a monstrous secret. Beginning in 1970, Corll began recruiting two teenagers, David Brooks and Elmer Henley, to lure boys back to his home with promises of parties and alcohol. Once there, victims were bound, tortured, and killed, their bodies buried in a rented boat shed, a beach, and other remote sites. Over 3 years, Corll killed at least 28 young men and boys, making the case one of the deadliest in American history at the time. His reign ended on August 8, 1973, when Henley turned on him during an argument and shot him dead inside his own home. The killings only came to light because Henley led police to the burial sites himself, and investigators spent days excavating a boat shed on the edge of town, uncovering body after body wrapped in plastic. The sheer scale of the discovery made national headlines and forced Houston to confront how so many missing boys had gone unnoticed for so long. Elmer Henley Jr. was one of Corll's own recruits, drawn in as a teenager with cash and gifts before becoming an active participant in the killings. After shooting Corll, Henley confessed everything, walking investigators through years of horror across Houston. He was convicted of 6 killings and received 6 consecutive 99-year sentences. David Brooks, the other accomplice, was convicted separately and sentenced to life in prison. Their case exposed how easily 2 ordinary teenagers could be pulled into extraordinary violence and forced Houston police to confront years of ignored missing person reports involving young men from working-class neighborhoods, many of whose families had been told for years that their sons had simply run away. Corll Eugene Watts, nicknamed the Sunday Morning Slasher, was born in Killeen, Texas, in 1953. He struggled in school, showed early violent tendencies, and was arrested for attacking women while still a college student in Michigan. Despite red flags, he was never seriously prosecuted. By the early 1980s, Watts had relocated to Houston, where his killing spree intensified. He targeted women almost at random, stabbing or drowning them in a chillingly ritualistic pattern that gave him his nickname. He was finally arrested in Houston in 1982 after 2 women managed to escape him and flag down police. In a controversial plea deal, Watts confessed to 13 killings in exchange for a reduced sentence, avoiding the death penalty entirely. Investigators believed his real total was far higher, with some estimates placing his true victim count above 80 women across 2 states. Decades later, new evidence connected him to earlier Michigan murders, and he was handed an additional life sentence before dying in prison in 2007. His plea deal remains one of the most criticized in Texas legal history, cited for years afterward as an example of how a lack of communication between states allowed a killer to keep operating. Henry Lee Lucas became one of the most confusing cases in American criminal history. Born in Virginia in 1936 into a violently abusive household, Lucas killed his own mother in 1960 and served a decade in prison. After his release, he partnered with fellow drifter Otis Toole, and the two crossed dozens of states committing petty crimes and, by their own admission, murders. When Lucas was arrested in Texas in 1983 on a weapons charge, he began confessing to hundreds of killings, eventually claiming responsibility for as many as 600 deaths across the country. Investigators later found his confessions riddled with inconsistencies, and many were proven false. Still, Texas courts convicted him of 11 murders, including the killing of an unidentified woman known only as Orange Socks, for which he received a death sentence. That sentence was commuted to life in prison by Texas Governor George W. Bush after doubts emerged about the evidence. Lucas died in a Texas prison in 2001, leaving behind a legacy defined as much by deception as by violence, and his case is still studied today as a warning about how eager investigators can be manipulated by a confessed killer looking to travel, gain attention, or simply avoid the harsher conditions of a single prison cell. Otis Toole, Lucas's traveling partner, was a drifter from Jacksonville with a documented history of arson and disturbing behavior dating back to childhood. Like Lucas, Toole confessed to numerous killings across several states, some connected to their shared cross-country crime spree that passed through Texas during the early 1980s. Many of his claims were later disputed or withdrawn, making it nearly impossible for investigators to separate fact from fabrication. Toole was never sentenced to death, and he died of liver failure in a Florida prison in 1996 without most of his confessed crimes ever being fully resolved. His partnership with Lucas remains one of the strangest and most unreliable chapters in American serial killer history, and detectives in multiple states still argue over exactly how many of the murders attributed to the pair actually happened at all. Kenneth McDuff, sometimes called the Broomstick Killer, was born in Rosebud, Texas, in 1946. He was convicted of a triple killing in 1966 and sentenced to death, but his sentence was commuted to life when the U.S. Supreme Court temporarily struck down capital punishment. Due to prison overcrowding in Texas during the 1980s, McDuff was granted parole in 1989 despite a long history of violent behavior behind bars. Within a few years, he began killing again, targeting young women in the Waco and Central Texas area, strangling several victims, and disposing of their bodies in rural fields. He evaded capture for months, even while appearing on America's Most Wanted. McDuff was finally arrested in Kansas City in 1992 after a tip from the broadcast. He was convicted of multiple killings and sentenced to death, and Texas executed him by lethal injection in 1998. His case became a national symbol of parole failures and directly led to reforms in how Texas handles violent offenders, including tighter restrictions on early release for inmates with a history of extreme violence. Lawmakers later pointed to his case by name while debating changes to the state's overcrowded prison system. Janine Jones, known as the Angel of Death, worked as a pediatric nurse in San Antonio during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Colleagues noticed that children under her care suffered mysterious cardiac emergencies far more often when she was on duty. Investigators later determined she had been secretly injecting infants and toddlers with drugs like digoxin and heparin, then reviving some of them to appear as a hero while allowing others to die. She was convicted in 1984 of killing a 15-month-old girl and sentenced to 99 years, but an old Texas law meant she was on track for early release decades later. Prosecutors scrambled to bring new charges before that happened, and in 2017 additional convictions kept her behind bars. Investigators believe her true victim count, most of them infants, could run into the dozens or more, making her case one of the most disturbing examples of institutional trust betrayed in Texas medical history. Her case also exposed how hospital record keeping at the time made it almost impossible to prove a pattern until families and co-workers began comparing notes on their own. Angel Maturino Resendez, known as the Railroad Killer, was a Mexican national who drifted through Texas by illegally hopping freight trains throughout the 1990s. He targeted people living near rail lines, breaking into homes close to the tracks before beating or bludgeoning his victims, and vanishing on the next departing train. His mobility made him extraordinarily difficult to track, since his crimes appeared unconnected across different states. Investigators eventually linked him to at least 9 killings across Texas, Illinois, and Kentucky. Facing mounting pressure and an FBI Most Wanted listing, Resendez voluntarily surrendered at the Texas border in 1999, reportedly believing a family member could negotiate leniency for him. There was none. He was convicted of capital murder in Texas and executed by lethal injection in 2006, closing one of the strangest manhunts in the state's history and leaving behind lingering questions about how many more victims may still be undiscovered along the thousands of miles of track he once called home. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on any of the serial killers discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 covering more of Texas's darkest true crime cases. Thank you again, and goodbye.